Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which I take a look at famous people saying famous things. Actually, that doesn't happen very often. This is one of the rare instances where I have like a recognizable name I'm looking at. I know I'm just here to sort of hamstring my own enthusiasm for these intros. And I come to you live from Crater Valley on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Thursday. Tempestuous Thursday. Yes, we return once again to the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks, so we might learn something, or at least find some entertainment in the ridiculousness of it all. I'll get to tonight's subject momentarily, but first, who's joining me on this beautiful Thursday evening? Dr. Functional, first, but okay. Good evening to you. Kiro Soldier, good evening to you, and thank you so much, Kiro Soldier. Here's something for the amazing content scribe. Oh, well, you're making me all blush and stuff, Kiro Soldier. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your generosity, and hope you enjoy the show. Noah Essentio, good evening. Keeverdam, good evening, and thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for posting the fundraisers for our friends AJ, Roan Harushan, Natalie, and Angela Ariaga. I'd like to once again spotlight the fundraiser for Roan Harushan, if you could. His family is in a decidedly place of crisis right now, and every little bit helps out with their current troubles. So please take a look at that one in particular, but take a look at all of them if you would. If you can donate, please do so. And if you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That would be appreciated as well. So thank you so much ahead of time. And thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the links. Mike R., good evening. Funtime Bats, good evening to you. Advocatus Diaboli, good evening. Otho May, good evening. Tall Person, hello. Zan Wild, hello. Attack Alpaca, hello. Robert Pincus, good evening. Who else is here? Shell D, good evening. Dale Ford, good evening. Dale Ford sounds like a car dealership. Come down to Dale Ford. MSRP something something. We won't be undersold. I don't know. Something like that. Maybe it's because my family has a background in car dealerships and things. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why. Found, good evening to you. Green Badger Outdoors, good evening. Angelverse, good evening. Who else is here? Sabian 187, good evening. Shadowclaw, good evening to you. Tyr Alexander, the Scourge, good evening. And I think that's everybody. I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, I apologize. And for anybody lurking or in the future, good evening. So yes, tonight we have a celebrity. I had been told some weeks ago, and I believe it was Mr. E that cued me into this, that it was apparently reported that David Hogg, yes, David Hogg, teen activist, or at least used to be teen activist, David Hogg, was going to be doing a TEDx. I thought, oh boy, I'll have to keep my eyes open. And then yesterday, it was published. Yes, we have a TEDx with David Hogg, the famed survivor of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting, and since then a very outspoken activist, specifically on gun control, and anything else he likes to put out on Twitter to be challenged by people who know a lot more about the world than he does. And probably more famously, or at least as far as I remember, him soliciting political donations from Canadians for American elections. I remember that part. That was funny. That was funny. Also, good evening, Hercule Stefano, Draco Rincewind, and then Hercule De Stefano. I had both of you in my eyeball sights at the time, and I kind of got mixed up there for a second. So pardon me, Draco Rincewind and Hercule De Stefano. All right. So yeah, with that, and what is it about? Honestly, when I saw that it was the David Hogg TEDx, I was just like, I'm there. I'm doing it. I made a thumbnail. I'm done. But there is a topic. There is a title of this thing. Want to build a better future? Let young people lead. Well, here's my only first hesitation to that. And I don't believe this is the first TEDx I've looked at that has made a similar argument. My first hesitation is young people don't know anything. They think they know something, but they don't know much. And what much that they do know is fairly dangerous if left to its own devices without adult supervision. And I say this, obviously, as an old fogey who just thinks he knows everything and can't give the kids a chance and da-da-da. Yeah, well, You might be surprised to know I was once a kid. I once thought I knew more than I actually did. And I learned, because that comes with age, experience, and reflection. This is where wisdom is born. And as precocious and as well spoken and articulate as the youth of today may make themselves in some instances, it's mostly for show, because I can tell by looking at them, they're not old enough to know better. Now, I know you might say, that's pretty cynical, Scribe. Boy, you don't have any hope for the children or the young people of today. I mean, hope springs eternal, but I don't know. Maybe David Hogg will surprise me. I don't know what he's going to talk about exactly. I'm going to assume somewhere in there's going to be something about gun control, and I'll give my thoughts on gun control as they become relevant, if they become relevant as he goes on. But yeah, anyway, so that's the introduction of that. Tonight's bingo card is bingo card C. C as in Porky Pig. Porky Pig being the winning pig character from today's X poll, deciding which of the three I chose was the best piggy character, and Porky Pig was the winner. So bingo card C. Links to the bingo cards are in the description below. And before I forget, which would be embarrassing to do at the end of the show, which I've done several times, I'm going to create the Discord link to join the Discord now, ahead of time, as I should have done before I actually went to air, because I'm going to do it now. And when the time comes, I'll put that link in the chat. And if you stick around long enough, or scan to the end of the show at some point to find out the secret word that'll let you join the Discord server, well, then you can join the Discord server. There you go. Also, Corey Suzuki, good evening to you. And Daryl Odell, good evening to you. Anybody else? Oh, Jamie Melquist, good evening. And anybody I missed in the last minute? I don't think so. If I did, I apologize. And with that, let's get started. This one clocks in at just over 13 minutes. I'll start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear it, and then we will proceed.
When I was growing up...
So, like, right now? When I was growing up? Well, guys, can you hear that okay? Let me know in the chat. And let's see. We got this here and this here. Oh, thank you, Kiever Dam. Let me bring this up here. You going to say, that's all, folks. Well, I wasn't, but maybe now I have to. So you kind of forced my hand there, Kiever Dam. I'll do my best. I'll do my best to sum up with a little appropriate Porky. And a guy in his room. Good evening. All right, everybody hears that okay? All right, when I was growing up. When I grow up. Okay.
When I was in high school.
So, a couple years ago.
I was a student journalist.
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in TV production and speech and debate.
Okay. TV production, speech and debate. How's that gone for you?
And that interest really stemmed from my learning disabilities.
Oh.
I have dyslexia and ADD.
Wow. Okay. And
I was always, throughout middle school and elementary school, I was very insecure about my writing.
Okay, well, let's go over to the bingo card real quick, because already he's hit on childhood or family anecdote. So circling that one. And I realize that childhood is relative, but he's 24 or something now, so it's reasonable. Let's remind ourselves on the bingo card what we are listening for tonight. Diversity, equity, and or inclusion. Word salad. Mind reading or assumes motives. A list. Marginalized or marginalization. Patriarchy. Contradicts own point or argument. Feminism. Attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. Systemic or institutional. Anecdote that probably never happened. White supremacy. Leaves out vital context. Argumentative non sequitur. Sales pitch for product or service. Privilege. Collectivizes own demographic. Self-vilification or wretchedness, and he might be hedging on that now with his whole self-consciousness about his writing, but we'll wait and see. Who knows? Economic disparity, benevolent condescension, plays victim, weightless example, and lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. So far on the board, we have free space because it's free, and childhood or family anecdote. So if you have any other arguments for squares to be circled as we proceed, hold on to them. There will be time for that at the end.
Because it was so hard for me to learn how to spell.
Okay.
And It was so bad that even in my freshman year, when I eventually made it into my debate class, I had written on my debate folder, without realizing it, I had spelled debate wrong. That is how bad it was.
Okay. There's no comedy in learning disabilities. Well, I mean, actually, there could be quite a bit. But anyway, okay, you had a hard time and have had a hard time all the way up through debate class.
And the reason why I got into speech and debate was because I wanted to show to my classmates that even though I couldn't spell or write very well, that I knew what I was talking about.
Okay, so you had something to prove to not yourself so much as to the people around you. Okay.
I was a very petty teenager in middle school.
And that has changed?
Many people are. And
not everybody in high school as a teenager is petty, but okay.
I would get in small arguments with random people and back and forth, and I wanted to be able to roast my classmates.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, at least he's, you know what? That is kind of like a self-vilification or wretchedness if he is sort of critiquing his past self. Presumably, he has learned his lesson. Right? Right, everybody? So circling self-vilification or wretchedness.
So I joined speech and debate. When I tried out, I thought it was going to be, we'd be debating different topics like, which is better, apples or oranges or something.
Okay, well, so wait a sec. You joined speech and debate and everything else to impress upon your classmates that you knew more about things than they did or that you actually understood things. And you thought debate class was going to be apples and oranges. Like literally, or are you talking just figuratively?
Something like that.
Really?
So you can imagine my surprise when I went out to try out for it. And I sit down, and the first question they ask me is, what's your opinion on the U.S.'s counterterrorism strategy in northern Iraq and Syria, and do you think it's working?
Okay, so you had no idea what kind of topics come up in formal debate before you joined a debate class. Okay.
I'm not kidding.
I didn't think you were. If you're okay. So do I believe that? So we're an anecdote that probably never happened territory. Do I really believe that David Hogg, of all people, so intent to impress the people around him about how much he knew about things, joined a debate club without knowing ahead of time what kind of topics can come up in a formal debate setting? I can actually believe that. Of all people, I can believe it.
I was 13.
You were 13. Okay.
And I tried to give the best answer I could based off of the 60 Minutes and other news shows that I had watched in the previous weeks. And I failed.
Yeah, well, again, that comes from the difference between ambition and actual knowledge, which is why the premise of this talk, at least the title that I read, falls short. So here, I guess here's my question then, as we proceed. With this self-awareness that David Hogg has about his youthful ambition and exuberance as compared to his real-world knowledge and experience, that grand contrast, where is he going to argue effectively that we should listen to the youth as leaders? I guess you'd have to define, like, at what point does he mean youth?
Because I mixed up Boko Haram with ISIS. Rookie mistake. And amazingly, they still let me in to speak.
Probably because they couldn't exclude you for being unprepared. Amazingly, they'd probably run into some kind of lawsuit if they kicked you out and you said, I have a learning disability. There's probably some ADA kind of stuff or some education amendments kind of deal. Yeah.
Speech and debate.
Yeah.
And from that's when I started learning about things like gun control, the NRA, and I had to argue on both sides of these issues. I had to argue both for and against universal background checks. I had to argue both for and against GMOs and U.S. drone strike policy and, all over the world and everything like that.
I can believe it. That's actual debate. And holy cats, Derek LaRue. Derek, I don't know what to say. I rarely know what to say when it comes to any of these things. Thank you so much. That's ridiculously generous of you. I really appreciate it. I've always appreciated your support and generosity for the show, and thank you so much. And hope you're having a good Thursday. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks again. You are a lion of an individual, and I'm not just saying that because of your mane. You have a mane there. Also, I can't help but mention that there's a celebrity in the chat. Or at least I think he's a celebrity. Aside from, Derek LaRue is a celebrity unto himself. Now, I have a comic book creator, fitness expert, and at least one time TEDx co-pilot, Jim Healis, is in the chat. Just getting here. He's 24 with that hairline. I feel bad for him already. Well, it's all the wisdom he has. All the wisdom has filled up his head and has stretched his widow's skull to the point where his hairline has to retreat to compensate. That's the problem. That really is the problem. But again, thank you, Derek LaRue, and good evening, Jim Healis. Okay, so yes, you had to argue on both sides of the gun control debate, GMOs, and so on. All right, so one would then think that you have a functional understanding, if not an agreement, with both sides of particularly hot-button issues. Okay, and
it was the most educational experience I had in my life. It changed my life.
Okay.
And I also was in TV production. And I always had a habit of being I was a bit of an angsty teenager, and I hated authority.
And that has changed drastically in the ensuing years, hasn't it?
I really hated politicians, especially.
Why? I can think of several reasons just off the cuff, but why did you hate politicians reflexively?
Because I felt like they had failed my generation so many times because they were some combination of corrupt and stupid and, several other adjectives I can't say on stage.
Well, that kind of goes for most of the high-level politicians and everything. But was that just sort of a amorphous sensation you had about politics in general, or do you have a specific example? I don't know that we'll get one, but it'd be nice to hear one.
And as a result, I would go out there and I would try to make these different hit pieces about my principal. We wouldn't have enough Spanish textbooks. So I'd email the principal and say, hey, why don't we have enough Spanish textbooks? I want to
But probably budgetary concerns.
Interview about it. And then all of a sudden, we had Spanish textbooks.
Oh, okay. So you found the power of the fourth estate, did you?
Right. And from that, I really started to learn my own voice and gain a lot of confidence, and I wanted to be a broadcast journalist.
Okay. And how's that been going?
And then one day, it was February at my high school.
We're going to get into the shooting now, aren't we? Okay, well, there's not going to be a whole lot of extra comedy or commentary I can give here, but I still have to pause occasionally for YouTube's sake, so here we go.
And it was a freezing day in Florida. It was about 70 degrees. So our door was open to our classroom because it was one of the few times of year it could be. And outside of our classroom, we hear a pop. My seatmate and I look at each other and we say, hey, we think that sounded like a gunshot. And we...
Wait a second. Okay, now this just may be my lizard brain memory. Sorry. Because I'm seemingly remembering that David Hogg, purportedly, this might be urban legend. I got to check this. Was David Hogg actually at the school the day of the shooting? Because I remember somebody telling me, or it being said long ago, that he wasn't actually on campus at the time of the shooting. Let's see. Okay. So just to clarify anybody else who might have that same notion. Question: was David Hogg at home during the February school shooting in Florida? Answer: no. Hogg recorded videos from inside the school during the shooting, and a teacher confirmed that he was there at the time. Okay, that is the published answer to that question. Okay, now again, I only asked it because my first thought was, wait, was that thing I heard true or not? I remember this from long ago. So okay, just making sure, just making sure.
We turn to the teacher, and she, closes the door. But right as she does, the fire alarm goes off, and we start walking out to where we're supposed to evacuate to. But as we're doing that, there's a flood of students that come in the opposite direction of where we are, and all of a sudden, we end up running with them and getting into a completely different classroom.
Okay, there are people in the chat that are saying that it's still not true. Okay, so, okay. Hold on. Let's see. Maybe I asked the wrong question. Okay. He was on campus. Well, being on campus is different than being in class when it started. Let's see. Where was David Hogg during the mass shooting? Okay. One person says he was home from school and rode his bike there when he heard it was happening. He went there specifically to say he was a mass shooting survivor. That's the claim. Let's see. Okay, so there's still okay. I was just checking to make sure that whether what I'd heard was urban legend or not. But there's still conflicting answers depending on the source. So in David Hogg's version, he was in class. He turned to his classmate when the shooting began. So he's effectively placing himself in class at the school at the time. Others are saying or have said that he traveled to the school after. Let's see. Oh, factcheck.org. Okay, this is factcheck.org from 2018. Let's see. Is this real full answer? Several weeks after hold on. Okay. In a CBS News documentary, the 17-year-old at the time said, quote, "On the day of the shooting, I got my camera and got on my bike and rode as fast as I could 3 miles from my house to the school to get as much video and to get as many interviews as I could because I knew this could not be another mass shooting," unquote. Because I knew that this could not be. Okay, that's weird. Let's see. All right. Okay. So it is said that he said this, but, quote, "At no point did Hogg ever say that in the CBS News documentary. Interviews and videos published in the days after the shooting support Hogg's narrative that he was at the school when the shooter opened fire and that Hogg went home at some point and returned to the scene later that night. In fact, Hogg, a student journalist and member of the school's news show, recorded interviews with his peers inside the school as it remained locked down. The Miami Herald published that footage February 15th, which shows Hogg asking his fellow students about their views on gun control." Okay. All right, so there's conflicting stories. So in one version, he heard about the shooting happening and rode his bike to there, but that story supposedly he never actually said that. Another version, he was there, left, came back, and filmed stuff. So I'm still not sure which is true, but someone showed the video. Okay. The overarching consensus seems to be that he was there when the shooting began. All right. Again, sorry for the diversion, but I just remember that was a big point of contention back in the day, obviously so, because there's like factcheck.org type stories on it and such. But I wanted to check that. All right. So that being said, and I know that there's people in the chat are saying sidewise or otherwise. I wasn't there. I don't know the truth, but apparently there's bits of truth to each part of the claims about it.
Where I'm with about 40 students locked in this classroom, and because I didn't know what to do, the only thing I could think of was to interview my classmates.
Okay, so wait. You interviewed your classmates while things were locked down. Okay, now I'm getting confused because so at first he's just in class, then he goes home and gets his camera and comes back later in the evening, but now he's interviewing his classmates while they're locked down during the activity?
Because I knew from my experience in TV production and speech and debate that school shootings in the United States had about a 1-week life cycle.
This is what you were thinking about as a high school student in the middle of a mass shooting.
And I wanted to make sure that if my classmates and I died in our classroom, that our voices, I interviewed them and I asked them what they thought about the NRA, what they thought about gun control, what they thought about what was happening to our country, and that.
Okay. I got to say, I was not there. This sounds ridiculous. Because the way he's framing it, they are currently under threat of death by an armed gunman roaming the school. And his first thought, somehow, is to start conducting press interviews with his classmates as they sit there waiting to find out if they're going to die, and ask them about political topics. Presumably, he's recording these things. This is his first. Okay. Anecdote that probably never happened. Him coming back later in the evening after everything had been locked down and it had all been over and done with and people were still outside, like, holding vigil or whatever. I could believe that. I could believe him coming back and interviewing people about the aftermath. In the middle of the lockdown in the classroom where there's somebody roaming the hallways and being quiet is probably the best strategy. That's his first action. I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
This was happening to kids in our country. Because I knew that the NRA's top strategy after every shooting was to say, you can't talk about this because you're politicizing tragedy.
Okay. I had a certain level of, as I said earlier, hope springs eternal, right? A little hope that maybe I haven't heard from or really paid attention to David Hogg in years and years and years. And, as he intimated at the beginning, there is a period of time where you can grow up, you can have reflection on your past self, your past mistakes and attitudes and so on, and maybe you've changed. And now in the middle of this, he tells a story that is fundamentally unbelievable. Even if I didn't have any previous suspicions about what he did or did not do the day of the event, him telling this story on its face right now, that in the middle of a lockdown and active shooter scenario, he's interviewing his fellow classmates about gun control and the NRA in order to thwart the NRA's usual narrative in the aftermath of such a thing. No, I don't believe it.
And I knew if the very kids who died in that shooting died saying that the adults, needed to do something, that it would be impossible for the NRA to refute that.
So you looked at your fellow classmates as useful, potential, sacrificial lambs / martyrs for your political cause. Okay, let's just sort of think of a list of things you could say in life that would make you come across like an absolute supervillain. I think somewhere on that list, something like this would appear. Thank you, Frosted Glass. So he's the reporter who gets punched in Die Hard. Man, William Atherton just cannot win. Whether it's going up against the Ghostbusters or John McClane, poor William Atherton. You know what a great William Atherton movie is? It's called Buried Alive. He does play a villain again, but at least this time it's not a jester-like comedic villain. It's actually a really good movie. Tim Matheson, William Atherton, and oh my God, I'm forgetting suddenly the name of the female lead. It's right in the midst of my forehead. Is this Jennifer Jason Leigh? Maybe? Could be. I might be wrong. Either way, great movie. It was like a USA movie. I got a copy of it on Blu-ray. I love it so much. Anyway, sorry, that's an aside. Okay. Oh no, the one in Predator 2, Frosted Glass. Well, I mean, that was Morton Downey Jr. Now, Morton Downey Jr. He was great in that movie. I loved Morton Downey Jr. as the reporter in Predator 2. That was great. That was great. William Atherton definitely deserved it. I don't know. Morton Downey Jr. was just playing his role. He was doing his part. Best acting Morton Downey Jr. ever did. I save for that episode of Monsters. And I'm talking about Monsters like the old anthology show on cable TV. If you don't know what that is, look it up. You can probably find it.
Or at least a lot harder.
Uh-huh.
And luckily that day I made it out of my classroom with my classmates, but 17 of my other classmates in the building next door to us, where the shooting we had come to find out had happened, did not make it out.
Oh, man. If only you had interviewed them before they died, they would have been so much more useful to your cause. Yeah, you see how diabolical that notion is when you stop and think about it for a second?
Along with their administrators.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, the other adults in the room just are afterthoughts. Sure.
But today I'm not here to talk just about the shooting.
Not just about the shooting? Okay, well, you let up and spent the better part of the first half of your talk doing nothing but.
I'm actually here to talk about something that keeps me up at this point even more.
Okay, I'm a third grader. He used that phrase. Okay, tell me, David Hogg, what keeps you up even more
than the shooting itself at night?
Okay, what's that?
And it's some of the conversations I've had over the past year going around the country with my organization, Leaders We Deserve.
Oh, okay. Let's see, sales pitch for product or service. All right. There you go.
I'm working now to help elect the next generation of young people that marched with us in 2018, that walked out of their schools, to help bring them into office.
Okay, so people that have since grown up into adults, you want to make them politicians. Okay. So they're not really as young as they used to be then. And okay, wait a second. He spent at least part of the first part of this talk reminiscing about the fact that he didn't know as much as he thought he did back when he was a teenager. And within that same vein, he and others of his peers marched and protested on subjects that maybe they did not have a great grasp of. They had been through a tragedy, certainly, but being through a tragedy doesn't suddenly make you an expert on some kind of subject. It just makes you a living martyr for that cause, which, of course, is what apparently he hoped to have happen to the students he was trapped in a classroom with. But now he wants to make those people, those kids, now adults, into politicians. Okay.
And it's because I'm tired of hearing the same answers over and over again from Democrats and Republicans alike.
What kind of answers?
In many state legislatures, you'd be surprised by the partisan leanings of some Democrats and some Republicans. Some are much more favorable and some are less.
Favorable to what? What? Okay. I mean, I can only guess from previous rhetoric, but as you said, you have grown up some to a certain extent. So I need some specifics. What is it you want to have happen? And what are the people whose, values and ideology aligns with yours? What is it that you intend to have done or want to have changed?
And I hear time and time again, what happened in Parkland is terrible, but that type of thing just doesn't happen here.
Doesn't happen here. Oh, you mean in other places around the country? Uh-huh. Okay. A judgy look is not a rejoinder.
And then it does.
So, what, and I mean this seriously, what would our speaker have changed about policy, law, or otherwise that would have demonstrably affected the likelihood of Parkland happening, if such a thing were in place at that time? Okay, that's usually what it is. If you have a tragedy occur, you go back, you look at all the elements that led up to said tragedy, and you find a weakness, right? You find a loophole, you find something that was missed, some procedure that wasn't followed, etc. It's a tragic way to learn a lesson, but unfortunately, that's oftentimes when we learn our lessons is from some terrible mistake. Okay, so given what happened in Parkland, what is it that David Hogg wants to have happen? What change does he want to have affected? That retroactively would have either stopped or stymied the advent of Parkland.
I am tired of that. And
Okay.
I believe, President Biden's generation, they didn't go through school shooter drills.
No, they went through like nuclear bomb drills and things like that.
But they did go through nuclear bomb drills.
Oh, but what the? Oh my God! What are the fucking odds? I did it again! I did it again! Oh my God! All right. Hey, you know what? David Hogg and I are right on the same page. All right. They did go through nuclear bomb drills. All right.
They didn't go through school shooter drills, but they did go through nuclear bomb drills. And that generation went on to pass some of the largest arms reduction treaties in human history.
Yes. Now, here's where we're going to run into a wall, I think. Now, let me bring up the text here just so I have it for reference. Here's something that I haven't talked about gun control that much. I don't really have much to say on gun control. Here's the thing. I don't own any guns. In fact, guns make me nervous. And most of my friends who are gun enthusiasts or have some training would say, well, that's just because you haven't had any gun control, or not gun control, but gun practice. You haven't had any training. I say that could be true. But I was surrounded, not literally, but I mean, my father owned several guns. He's a former police officer. I'm familiar with guns in that respect. I have fired a gun before. It's true. For some reason, not quite comfortable around them. However, and for a long time, up through I'd say my early 20s, I had a notion in my head that the Second Amendment was out of date because it only applied to a well-regulated militia. It was an amendment that had been taken out of context, twisted and turned around so that everybody and their brother can own a howitzer if they really wanted to. And then in the early days of commentary YouTube, I don't know if he still does YouTube. I'm not quite sure, but there was a YouTuber, might still be, named Vernaculus. And I caught a video he did where he was talking briefly about the Second Amendment. And he was addressing this very argument that it's only about a well-regulated militia. And he's like, well, you have to read the text. There's some very specific words in there. And it's a very short amendment. I mean, the text of the amendment is not very long. So it's not that hard to do. And he said, yes, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The people, not the militia, not the military, this, that, and the other, but the people. And it was a very simple argument, a very simple counterpoint. But as soon as I heard that in my still developing sort of political mind at the time, because again, there was a time where I thought I knew everything. I thought to myself, as an English major, I can't get around that. The text is the text. Now, obviously, shall not be infringed has been infringed. We have laws on gun ownership. We have checks and balances. We have waiting times. We have all types of things. There are guns that people are not allowed to own and or buy without much difficulty and so on. You can't just buy a nuclear weapon, right? You just can't own a tank without any kind of encumbrance. So the text itself is not explicitly held to, obviously. We've made many changes and amendments and laws over time that have infringed on people's rights. You know, if you're a convicted felon, your likelihood of you being able to legally own a gun is pretty much out the window, and on and on and on. So there are exceptions. It is not absolute. But ultimately, it's not about a well-regulated militia either. So anyway, if anybody has to ask about my opinion on gun control, that's pretty much where I'm at. If you legally can own a gun, you can own a gun. Ta-da! Just like you can legally own a ballpoint pen, and if you're John Wick, you can hurt somebody with it. Maybe not to the same extent as a gun, but, you know, it's all about the intent. The gun does not kill people. The trigger finger does. Anyway, moving on.
Through START 1, START 2, and the New START treaties. I believe it's going to take bringing our generation into office now, as soon as possible, that understands the anxiety of what it's like to go through a school shooter drill into office now.
To do what? Okay, you know what? Let's say you do. Let's say you populate the House and the Senate with 51% plus of people who have gone through shooter drills or themselves have been either directly or peripherally affected by such events. What would you have them do specifically? I mean, simply having that experience and having that knowledge is one thing, but what is the specific aim, no pun intended, but I'll take it, that you are going for?
So that we're able to get this change.
How? Change? How?
But what keeps me up far more than just gun violence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, really, David, I hate to tell you this. You really need to work on your phrasing there. Okay. What keeps me up at night? At night. You really need to add that there. Otherwise, it sounds like you're talking about a very, very strange fetish.
Far more than just gun violence. Or conversations that I've had going around the country, because I go and knock doors with our candidates.
What is your platform?
And there was an older woman that I met just last November.
Okay.
I was in Virginia. I was working on an election for one of the youngest people to run in that state since actually Thomas Jefferson, when he was elected when he was 26.
Wow. And how did that go? And what was the platform?
To that state legislature.
Wow. Did humble brag much? Okay.
And I go up to this woman's house to knock on her door. She's about 75 years old. Her name's Helen. And I tell her that she's in one of the most important races in this state, that her voice really matters, right?
Okay. Buttering her up. Uh-huh.
And her response to me is, you know, I don't really care. My voice doesn't matter. All politicians corrupt. They all suck. Nothing's ever going to get better. And I'm just going to die anyways. So why even bother?
Well, fatalist Helen. All right, David. So you're confronted with this amount of cynicism, not unlike that which you possessed when you were younger regarding politicians, right? Or maybe still do. So what was your response to 75-year-old Helen?
Right. I know we hear a lot about how young people suck and don't vote in general, and how we're just disengaged and eating Tide Pods and things like that.
Yeah, we do hear about that a lot, don't we?
But there's also a lot of older people who don't vote as well.
It's true. I haven't voted in the last 2 presidential elections. I voted in all the local stuff, but the last 2 presidential elections in particular. And more likely than not, this will be my 3rd one where I won't vote in the presidential. Yeah, no, it's true. There are a lot of people that either legitimately or otherwise see their vote as completely meaningless, or, like me in the last couple of elections, just haven't wanted to put their vote behind any of the candidates available to us.
That we also need to be talking about, right? But I've also had the same conversation just last week, just a week and a half ago.
Whoa, wait. What did you say to Helen? You don't bring up something like that and then just let it drop, right? You're going to tell us, what did you say to Helen to at least attempt, whether you were successful or not, to convince her otherwise?
In Texas, when I was working on another campaign.
Okay, so you're in Virginia, you talked to a disaffected voter, the end. Okay, and now you're in Texas. Going great, David.
I was going up to what was supposed to be about a 60-year-old woman's door named Lisa.
You just got a thing for the old ladies or something?
and I knock on the door, and to my surprise, a shirtless 20-year-old with gaming headphones on opens up the door.
Okay, did that make you more or less happy than the expectation you were going to see an elderly woman?
And I explained to him, he didn't acknowledge that he was shirtless. It was kind of weird.
Why should he? He's in his own home.
I explained to him.
What was he supposed to do? It's like, pardon me, I'm topless. What?
The election and the importance of voting. And he's like, that's awesome. The candidate supports abortion rights. They support gun control. They support all this.
Supports abortion rights, supports gun control, supports all this.
And he's like, that's great. I totally agree with that. But what corporations are funding her?
If I hadn't already circled anecdote that probably never happened, I'd probably be circling anecdote that probably never happened again. But okay. In this story, that's what he asked.
And I got to say, because our candidates don't take corporate money, there actually are none.
So where does the funding come from then?
That are funding her. Because as the leaders we deserve endorsed candidate, you can't take corporate money.
Can't take corporate money. Okay.
And I got to see. Thank you.
I mean, admittedly, I'd prefer it if there was if political campaigns had to be funded and could only be funded with public money to a certain extent. I would prefer that rather than thinking about these giant PACs that do all this stuff and all the money spent and all the mysterious, untraceable funds that go to some campaigns or some efforts over others. People get airtime equally, et cetera, and so forth. I wish our political campaigns were more publicly funded than they were corporately or privately funded. I think, plus the fact the barrier for entry to actually run for offices of significance or otherwise in this country, you practically either have to be a millionaire or be really cozy with millionaires to be able to get any traction. That was, and I know there's plenty of arguments to the counter, and I understand that, but and I know this is going to be shocking, but a fight to turn off corporate money for politicians under law was one of the few things way back in the day, at least in principle, that I agreed with the Young Turks on. There was a big drive way back when to try to pass laws to prevent corporate money in politics and to get big money out of politics. Citizens United kind of ended all that. Somebody's really revving their engine outside. But anyway, it's a very complicated issue that I'm probably just stupid on, but more idealistic than anything else.
And then he asked, he's like, well, who is funding her? And I said, I am, because we were our biggest contributor to her campaign. But
well, who are you? Do you not have your own corporation? Here's what I got to ask. Is David Hogg just a guy, or is he the representative of a larger corporate entity by any chance?
But I got to see his face shift from one of suspicion and distrust to one of excitement and inspiration.
Wow. Why are you telling us so much about this guy and you're leaving out the 75-year-old? You just wrote her off? 75-year-old gives some pushback to the idea of voting, not worth talking about again. This 20-year-old, okay, all right. I mean, it's your story.
And what worries me is, when I was in high school, I was not too unlike that young man that I met.
When you were in high school, you were looking at your classmates as potential political martyrs who you would immortalize on film, according to your own story. So this guy asking at least a relatively decent question about where the money's coming from to fund a candidate, that alone does not put the two of you in a similar light, I'm afraid.
I met in Texas, right? Who I got after that conversation, he actually did turn out and vote, and that candidate won by 74 votes.
Wow. Who was that candidate? Who Who was the... I'm still waiting to hear, what change do you want to affect in law, policy, or otherwise? Like, what are you aiming to have happen?
Becoming the youngest person in the Texas State Senate since Sam Houston.
Okay, if he's not going to say, I'm going to look it up because I'm just too... youngest person elected to Texas State Senate. Okay, let's see. It may be, and I'm only guessing here, James Tallarico, youngest state representative in Texas legislature, settles in for the 86th session. This is back in January of 2019. So I'm guessing. I don't know if, let me see if there's a David Hogg reference here somewhere. There is not, but then I don't know. So is that who it is? I don't know. Why doesn't he say the name of this person? Who are you talking about?
And the first openly LGBT person ever in that.
Okay. Young and something within the alphabet of LGBTQ plus, etc. Name unimportant. Who is this person? What is their platform? What did they hope to do? You know, it'd be really nice once in a while if I could hear of a political figure, candidate, or otherwise, described first and foremost by their merits and their goals, and not by the color of their skin, what they do in the bedroom, or their age, or something else, or their gender. It just tell me something, dare I say, substantive about the person you are lauding. It'd be nice, at least once in a while. But okay, the youngest and not straight in some fashion. Name unimportant.
That state senate as well.
That's an applause line, everybody. That's something to celebrate. The absolute absence of actual identity. Filling in for a demographic. Yay.
But, you know, I understand the sense that his name was Kai.
Oh, thank you. His name was Kai. All right, so not James Tallarico. Kai, Texas Senate. I no, I don't know how to spell Kai. Spell Kai. Pardon me. Kai, like, or maybe it's like Kai, like Kai. Is it Kai Shapley? I honestly don't know. I'm looking up like Kai, Texas Senate. I have no idea. But this person was elected to office.
That young man that I was talking to, I understand.
Wait. The young man you were talking to. Okay. I am really trying here, but he's made it practically impossible. Okay?
What the fuck are you talking about?
What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Right?
Okay, so is Kai the person you were campaigning for when you met Shirtless Wonder? Or is Kai the Shirtless Wonder? And if you have whoever this person was, why don't you give their full name? Kai what? What does Kai stand for? Or is Kai the Shirtless Wonder? What?
Understand what he was thinking, right? I have felt the same way through much of my life.
Wait. Okay, sorry, I got to go back. I maybe my pausing screwed something up. Let's try this again, okay?
Who I got after that conversation, he actually did turn out and vote, and that candidate won by 74 votes.
That candidate.
Becoming the youngest person in the Texas State Senate since Sam Houston. and the first openly LGBT person ever in that state senate as well.
So was that James Tallarico? Pardon me. James Tallarico. And again, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. Maybe? I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. I'm confused. So he won't name the candidate, but he'll give us the first name of the shirtless wonder, I guess. Anyway, okay. Frosted Glass, thank you again. $5 says Kai and shirtless wonder kept David up. Oh! Oh! All right, I give up. I guess Kai is the guy at the door, and the candidate he got elected, he says he got elected, we'll never hear the name of.
But, you know, I understand the sense that his name was Kai, that young man that I was talking to. I understand what he was thinking.
Okay, why do you understand what he was thinking? Could you give us the platform you were campaigning for, by the way?
Right. I have felt the same way through much of my life, especially before I got involved in politics. I truly saw both political parties as obviously differing on some policy issues, but largely the same, as both being corrupt and owned by the same corporations.
Well, stick with that thought, and you might have a better outcome.
And pretty much saw all politicians as sucking in general and never doing the right thing.
Well, you don't want to paint with the widest brush, but there is some truth to your concerns. You have to look at each candidate individually and also see how they behave in their words versus their actions. It takes a bit more attention than most people want to commit to it, but, you know, that's life.
And it's understandable that my generation, that I would feel this way, that my generation would feel this way. After all, we've been told that the best thing our government, the most powerful one ever to exist in human history, all it can do to stop a school shooting is teach you how to run, hide, and fight.
Okay, well then, all right, David, you have the platform. You've got 3 minutes left in your talk. What are you proposing be done to retroactively, if you could, prevent the school shooting you were in attendance for? What would you change in law or policy to have no more school shootings occur? Ideally. I really want to hear your idea. Go.
Because our politicians would rather put our teachers on the front lines instead of having the courage to stand up to the NRA.
Okay, so the NRA is to blame for the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. All right. What would you want to have happen in the way of standing up to the NRA that would have the knock-on effect of preventing school shootings? Go.
And what worries me,
I don't want to know what worries you. I already know what worries you. I want to hear what you want to have done. You have stated the problem. You have stated the problem that you want to attempt to solve through political action and legislation, presumably, although we've not mentioned any yet. So, how would you attempt to solve for this problem if you had the ability or the leverage politically to do so? I've been waiting this entire time. Thank you, Nerf Ninja. Hit that like button. I just did. I just did on your super chat. Now, if you want to hit that like button for the stream, that would also be appreciated. Also, this is Nerf Ninja's third super on a live stream. I'm number 3. I'm number 3. Yay! Thank you, Nerf Ninja. Appreciate it. And yes, take Nerf Ninja's advice. Hit that like button if you haven't already. I am told, again, I'm just told things. I'm told it somehow helps with the algorithm and that maybe I'll just randomly end up with one of my videos on someone's feed and they'll be going, where did this come from? And I'll become one person more famous or something like that. Okay. Anyway, what worries you?
Is that we've raised a generation
What do you mean we, white man?
that has been told their entire lives that that is all their government can do for them, to keep them safe in the one place of all that they should be kept safe the most.
Okay, again, let's say I stipulate to your claim. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you're right. The government has done nothing. No one's done anything. It's all just been run and hide. All right. What would you have done, or what would you do? Change that.
School. If they grew up in that reality, they're going to continue buying into the self-fulfilling prophecy that I know millions of Americans have.
School shootings are a self-fulfilling prophecy? Okay.
Which is that nothing is ever going to get better because all of our politicians suck, everything sucks, and you might as well not even vote, you might as well not even bother trying because your voice doesn't matter and nothing's ever going to get better.
Okay, again, what do you have on offer? What is your idea? You have to tell us what your idea is. Otherwise, a politician standing on a platform saying, I'm going to do something about school shootings, and then there's applause and no follow-up, is exactly what you're doing here. So, be the change you want to see, and please, in the remaining 2 minutes that you have on this stage, articulate for us, in a perfect world, what would you change about the law, or what policies would you implement that you think would directly affect and mitigate or minimize the risk of school shootings? Anytime now, David.
The problem is that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Thankfully, we do not live under a dictatorship.
Oh, we don't? I'm being told more and more that depending on how the vote goes in November, we will be. But okay. And of course, never mind what happened during the course of the lockdown. I don't remember. But okay. All right. And so
Currently.
Oh, currently. You had to get that in there.
But what worries me,
I'm so sick of hearing what worries you, David.
is that those young people and that older person and everyone in between that has that same mindset.
Yeah, that older person that you won't tell us what the response was to their dour interpretation of political activity. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They want one person. They're a prime target for an authoritarian.
Oh, they are.
That's what keeps me up at night.
Okay, at least you used at night this time. Good for you. Good for you. Okay, so again, David, you need to put on offer your solution. Go.
Because so many Americans have lost faith that their government can represent them or do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you there is no one coming to save us.
Okay, roll credits. So you've got nothing. Nothing at all? No ray of hope, no ray of light you'd like to present us with? Why are you on this stage? What are you arguing for?
There's no single person coming to save us because
no, you're right. There's no savior on. You're correct.
The day that there is one good politician, I know there's an itch that many people have. They just want one good person to come along and fix the system, weed out all the corrupt politicians, and do the right thing.
Yeah, well, a Spike Lee joint isn't going to solve the problems. You're right. There's a great song from XTC called Peter Pumpkinhead. Kind of goes along those same lines. Doesn't end well for Peter Pumpkinhead.
That isn't owned by anybody. Stop me, this sounds familiar. That isn't owned by anybody and just represents the people.
Right. So like the candidates that you were pushing up to and through the Shirtless Wonder, right?
It doesn't take BS from anyone.
The
problem is, for you to get 100% of what you want in politics, you need 100% of the power.
Yes, that would be called a dictatorship.
That is not possible.
You're right. Congratulations. Yes, most of the time it's about compromise and everybody going away not entirely satisfied. Welcome to adulthood. You've got 1 minute and 16 seconds.
Democracy. For us to fix this, for us to make school shootings history and not headlines, for us to actually make a government by and for the people,
Yes, your solution is
to represent us. It's
yes.
going to require us remembering that we are not going to be saved by any one person, that we, as the American people, have to save us.
Okay, well, when you say we as the American people, you're never going to have one single through line of thought on how to address an issue. You have to make your best case, David. And you're not going to convince everybody no matter how hard you try. But you at least have to make the case, David. You cannot stand on a stage just spewing out Hallmark card level political rhetoric and hoping that we're all just going to get behind the idealistic idea that, oh, if only we could get behind the run good idea. No. Specifics, David. How's it going to work? How much is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? Who are you going to get on side to pass this legislation, whatever it is? Okay. Rhetoric's great. Big, high-minded ideas are fine. But the devil is in the details. And the more that you're actively avoiding giving us those details, the less faith I have that you actually have an answer. You just sound like every other politician, David.
Because that is the only way that we are going to get ourselves out of this mess. And it's not going to be in one election. It may not even be in 2 or 3. It's going to take a lifetime. But luckily, young Americans today have the greatest advantage you can have on your side in politics, which is time.
And in those lifetimes that the young politicians of today are going to experience, do you think that they're going to stay stagnant? Do you think the wide-eyed idealism of their youth is going to sustain itself through the trials and tribulations of adulthood and the way the world really works a lifetime from now? I mean, I know I might just be cynical here, and I am. But you obviously haven't learned anything.
And the fact that we're going to outlive a lot of those who doubt us.
Boy, oh boy. First, it's I'm going to turn my fellow students into martyrs for the cause. And now we're just going to wait you guys out so we can take over. Okay. And then you'll get what? 100% of what you want in politics? Okay, David. Oh, yeah, you see, even the audience isn't quite sure. Am I supposed to clap at that? We're just going to, like, hope you guys die so we can take over?
So,
a needle pulling thread.
The work that I'm doing now.
You're doing work? Tell me about your work.
Is I'm working to show young people in every state that I can around the country that while they think the system's corrupt, while it sucks, while they think that everything is broken, they can at least see one person like that candidate that we just elected in Texas and know that maybe not all hope is lost. Because
I thought you were supposed to put all of your trust and regard and visions of the future in one person. And that one person in Texas, whose name you have not even mentioned. You want to hold this person up as a beacon, as a shining light of hope to young people, and you're on a TEDx stage, broadcast and available around the world, and especially here on the moon. And you won't even say this person's name. Why? That is so weird.
because there is one person who represents me, but there isn't one person who's going to save me, because there are hundreds around the country who don't take corporate money, who do the right thing, and are there to fight for me.
Okay. Here's something. Someone not taking corporate money does not inherently make them someone who is, quote unquote, doing the right thing. What are their politics? What are their policies? What do they want to have happen? I could see someone taking corporate money, not taking corporate money, who wants to do terrible things. I could imagine somebody who's not taking corporate money who wants to do great things. That tells me nothing. Nothing. It's just like someone's skin color or their gender. I just elected the first LGBTQ plus IA septuagenarian hockey player to the Montana State whatever. And none of those things tell me anything about that person's policy positions, platform, their merits, anything. Nothing. So simply the absence of corporate money may or may not be a selling point. It's the details, David. Like the person's name to start with.
Thank you so much.
That's it. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't know what to expect, but I guess maybe I expected something. No, I guess I didn't. I guess he met expectations. A whole lot of nothing. A whole lot of nothing. No proposals, no policy proposals, legislative proposals. Won't even mention the name of his star candidate. And it's just a bunch of fluff. If only we could inspire young people to get involved in politics, and for all the hardships that they'll have and all the resistance that they'll meet with their ideas, they have the foreknowledge of knowing, if only I can live long enough, everybody that I hate will die. Good gravy. All right. Well, there you go, everybody. That is a David Hogg TEDx. It is the rarest of Pepes, as it were. I'm not quite sure I got a whole heck of a lot out of it, but hey, he wasn't at a TED Talk, so I guess maybe TED retains some of its credibility in that regard. Although I'll be curious to see how long it takes TED to post this on their YouTube page. Anyway, let's move on to the bingo card. Remember, it's bingo card C. Links are in the description. Let's see. Oh, that's sized just correctly. Good. All right. I'm going to go over the bingo card one more time by myself. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, hold on to them, and I will get to you momentarily. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm gonna take a little bit of an executive decision on this one. His naming the candidate's age and orientation-ish status, because there's a lot of things going on in LGBTQ and so on. But either way, that is some DEI thinking right there, if I've ever heard it. So circling diversity, equity, and inclusion. Word salad. The whole thing was a word salad. From soup to nuts, as it were. The whole thing was a word salad. It was just words without meaning most of the time. Pardon me. I get a little froggy in my throat. Mind reading assumes motives. I'm sure there's in painting the whitest brush possible on politicians and so on. Yes, I think so. I'm gonna circle that one. I think that's applicable. A list. Now, did he give us a list? I was hoping for like step 1, step 2, or this is how I'd solve the problems of school shootings. He didn't do that, so I don't think so. Marginalization. Yes, in the sense that he did talk about voters who were disaffected by the process and the system and trying to bring them in. So, or felt disenfranchised. So in that sense, yes, I think that was at least part of the argument. Patriarchy, no, he didn't really bring up, a bunch of old men are in charge of things. Contradicts own point or argument. Well, he didn't see. Here's the thing: he didn't have an argument. He never gave us an argument. He just said, "Wouldn't it be nice if we had young people in stuff, and we should get inspired to change things?" But he never said how. How would you change things? So, in that sense, yeah, he contradicted his own point by not having an argument. Feminism, no. Attempt to coin new buzzword or buzz phrase. No, I would not credit him with anything new. Systemic or institutional? Yes, politics as an institution and as a system, political system, democracy, the broken nature thereof, etc. Sure. Let's see. White supremacy. He never did bring up race, strangely enough. So, yeah, leaves out vital context. Yeah, you ain't just whistling Dixie. I know I'm kind of double dipping on this one, but again, the main thrust of his presentation was about school shootings, and at no point did he ever even detail to us what his platform would be or what change he would like to see made to affect or mitigate the thing he was complaining about. Argumentative non sequitur. the 75-year-old lady in Virginia. Like, why bring her up? Why just mention that I met an old lady who wasn't interested? And you just write her off like she doesn't matter? Okay. I mean, that's how I felt about that. And by the way, just as a reminder, if you have an argument to veto a square I've circled, if you don't think that my justification for circling a square is well justified, those are perfectly good points as well. So I'm all open for those. I mean, maybe I'm just too off the cuff with some of these things. You can always argue against a circled square. Privilege. I don't think he ever said the word. Did he ever dwell on the concept? I don't think so, or at least not in a way that I feel reflexively circling us. Collectivize his own demographic. Yes, we as young people, etc., and so forth. We all have this ability to outlive our enemies. Economic disparity. I don't think he ever talked about, well, let's see. Well, in the sense of candidates that have corporate money versus those that don't. So in that sense, yes, there was an economic disparity made as a point within his presentation. So, sure. Benevolent condescension. Benevolent condescension. I mean, there was some condescension in there. I don't know. I'd need an example. I love examples. So you're going to have to give me one because I can't think of one. Plays victim. Okay, now here's the tough part. Was he at the only thing that he's got victimhood points on, if he has any at all, it's that he was present during a school shooting. Now, I don't believe his story, right? As far as like, I interviewed my classmates in the middle of a lockdown with an active shooter wandering around the school. I don't, that doesn't make any sense to me. That sounds insane. And nothing of the previous stories seems to indicate that happened. That he did interview people after the lockdown ended, after in the aftermath of things. That may be true. But is he playing a victim because he was either present at or associated with that event? No. The thing really happened. He was really there in some capacity. And so I can't fault him on that score. If somebody has some other argument, I'm open to it. But I think the actual event itself doesn't count for that square. Also, thank you, Faustonia, for the happy, laughy Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie, wow, wow.
That's a Liat Fox, Dogcat Fox. Did that play slowly or something? Like StreamYard seems to be having a weird delay on me playing some of my stingers. I don't know if it's just me or it's just the perception I have from the StreamYard side. Either way, thank you, Faustonia, very much. Very generous of you. Hope you're enjoying the show and hope you're having a good evening. All right, so we're almost done here. Let's see, what else do we have? Weightless example. Weightless example. I don't know if it was those stories at the beginning of his discomfort or whatever, learning, trying to overcome his learning disabilities. Maybe that's more of an argumentative non sequitur versus a weightless example. Maybe the old lady's the weightless example, and the argumentative non sequitur was all that I was an awkward kid stuff. 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. I think I could put either one in either spot. So there you go. Oh my gosh, we are missing bingos just by a hair here. Okay, and lastly, microaggressions or unconscious bias. I don't know if he ever got that specific, though. No, nothing's coming to me immediately. So there we go. That's the bingo card as I have it. We are on the edge of several different bingos. The floor is open to you, everyone. So if you have an argument for squares to be circled, put it in the chat now. If you've already put it in previously and I missed it, just please repost it. And if you tag me in that comment, it makes it easier for me to spot it amongst everything else. So here we go. Advocates Diablo, Scribelight, the guy with no shirt was clearly a microaggression. I mean, depending on your interpretation. You know, what keeps David up? Anyway, let's see. Atticus W. Contradiction. A young person shot up his school kind of show the young don't make such great leadership decisions. Oh, jeez. Contradicts own point or argument. Yeah, well, fair enough there, I suppose. Let's see. Let's see. Unconscious bias. All old people want us deleted. Oh, right. Yeah. All the government wants is to run and hide. Nobody's doing anything about. Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing. It's a double bingo square. That's the one thing. I need a bit more. I need a bit more. I need a bit more than that. So I need something from the talk specifically that exemplifies either a microaggression or unconscious bias. Of course, unconscious bias, they're very specific things. So I think you might have more of an uphill battle than you might imagine. Having a bias does not equate to an unconscious bias or mentioning the phrase. I need something, especially for a double bingo square. I need something a bit more. Scarlight plays victim. Whether it's true or not, he obviously played the victim talking about being in the shooting. Okay, so I guess then the question becomes, for the sake of things, has he cynically leveraged his association with that event in order to try to gain favor or whatever else? Given that his story, this version of his story about interviewing his classmates on the hope that maybe their dying declarations would move the needle on his political agenda, you know what? I'd say that kind of earns the spot in that way. It's kind of a convoluted path to get there, but I think I can agree with that. I'll make that concession given how just bizarre and almost barbaric that little tidbit he gave us was. So circling plays victim on that one. Assassin's Creed is simply leveraging. Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So again, I agree with that one. Let's see. Advocatus says the old lady was not a non sequitur. He was comparing how one generation is seen, the youth, to how the older generation actually are. Okay, so she was just she just completely given up and she wasn't going to go anywhere, whereas the youth are more open to ideas and such. Is that do you think that was the point you think he was trying to make? If that was his intention, that's not quite what I got from it. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. So are you arguing that I should remove one of the circles? I guess is the question. Is that what you mean, Advocatus? Let me know. Let's see. Frosted Glass. We've already done Contradict's point, but either way, he pointed out how little he knew as a kid, but wants young people to lead the way. Well, again, that's true. I brought that up earlier on. It's like, well, you're telling us that you went into a debate club thinking you were going to talk about the difference between apples and oranges, and you're actually asked about, serious political issues and things like that, and you're like, yeah. Okay, Assassin the Great comes back. Unconscious bias. They wanted us deleted, and they don't care, and they never do nothing to help us, and they take our vote for granted. I mean, that's not really an unconscious bias. See, here's the thing. Unconscious bias usually isn't a reflection of the speaker unless they're saying something that, at least seemingly, they're not even aware to the audience in their speech that they're professing such a thing. In this case, he has a very conscious and well-spoken bias against the politicians of the now and the old guard and the atomic generation and everything. So I don't think that counts. He never brought up the term microaggressions. He never talked about unconscious bias. I know I've stretched the definition of that a few times in the past, but in this case, that wasn't a very unconscious bias. It was a very deliberate declaration of truth. So I'm not sure. And yes, I'm arguing for removal. Okay, so All right. Well, there was the weightless example of the old lady, right? And then there was the argumentative non sequitur of his faulted youth, of his learning disabilities and everything else. I kind of switched them back and forth. They could apply to either one. So, Advocatus, would his opening talking about his learning disabilities and so on, in the course of the rest of the presentation, would you say that could count as an argumentative non sequitur, or does that also not meet the mark? Because yeah, it is my fault, but I kind of like went back and forth between the two, between the old lady and his learning disabilities. I figured one or the other could fit in either square. Let's see. Have you guys have a Hallmark card, political rhetoric, new buzz phrase? Even if you say, yeah, I know. I can't circle a square on my behalf for what I've said. Yvonne Solomon, benevolent condescension, claiming the government is afraid of the NRA. Oh, benevolent condescension. Think about that one for a second. Abdicast, no, that is more of a history of the speaker. It sets the tone for the rest. Okay, so on topic, on the board here, so to speak, him detailing his learning disabilities and his awkwardness amongst his classmates and his petty, all that stuff in the beginning, that is not an argumentative non sequitur. I want to make sure, and so I'm going to put it to a straw poll. Actually, I can actually put a poll up. I can do that, right? I have the power to do that. Actually, put up a poll, correct? Engage with my audience. Yeah, start a poll. Okay, so, is David's wasted youth a non? If I can spell sequitur right, which I probably can't. Okay. I'm going to put the poll up right now. Okay. So I'll give it a couple of minutes here. So basically, should I uncircle the square argumentative non sequitur? If you think I should uncircle it, you would answer no. If you think I should leave it where it is, you would answer yes. And I'll come back in a moment. Let's see. This whole frickin' shtick is benevolent condescension. Well, that's also a good point. That's also a good point. Game Master 0010. Hi, Scribe. Darn y'all are wrapping up. I must travel to the past. He's gonna take you back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. Anyway, I could go. Let's see. So any other arguments for squares to be circled? We'll get to the unsquare here in a moment. Rotten Corpse. He did basically dismiss everyone who disagrees with him from his generation as not doing the right thing. Not sure where it fit, but didn't want to mention. That's is that benevolent? You know, there was an air of obviously moral superiority, and especially when he started dropping. Like again, it still bugs me that he didn't even give us a whiff of what it is that he would have done. But he already knows that everybody that isn't on his side is on the wrong side of history or not doing the right thing. So yeah, okay, benevolent condescension. Frosted Glass says, I missed your last argument. Oh, okay, let me let's see. The old lady you mentioned was a non sequitur too. Well, yeah, but I used her for weightless example, and as much as I try to avoid it, I don't like to double dip. So old lady is weightless example at this point. He brought her up, didn't give a lot of context. Maybe he was trying to compare and contrast, but he brought her up as though she was something significant, and then she just kind of dropped it, and it didn't add or detract anything from his presentation. So old lady is spoken for. The question here is now, is his opening gambit talking about his learning disabilities, his pettiness, etc., in his youth? Is that effectively an argumentative non sequitur? It is decidedly possibly a contradicts own point or argument about how the youth should lead us, but either way. So far on the poll, is David's wasted youth a non sequitur? I use wasted youth as a meatloaf reference, but also just as shorthand. So far, I've got 81% it is, and 19% it's not. So far, the audience feels that it should remain circled. Okay. I'll leave the poll up for another couple of minutes. Any other arguments for squares to be circled otherwise? Let's see. Urkeley to Stefano, sometimes you gotta double dip, especially at the end. I'll just leave that there. Let's see. It was introducing the speaker and his state of mind that makes it relevant. But did he bring it back in some way? I guess that's my question. He talks about it, but did he cite any lessons learned from it? Because again, he brings up his pettiness, he brings up his not understanding about what the debate was ahead of time and so on. But I would have thought, and again, this is just me, that if I'm going to bring up something like that, that I would very soon thereafter inject a level of humility into the character I'm presenting of myself, that, I learned things. I thought I knew stuff, but I didn't, and I grew up. But he continued from that point, never brought it up again, and then talked as though that the students that protested at the time, or roundabouts the time of the shooting, should themselves become politicians and will carry that same sentiment and worldview forward further into the future. It's almost as if the very lessons he was sort of giving us about his own development in knowledge and awareness of the world around him vanished. Like he can't even see himself as an example of how opinions, knowledge, the extent of your understanding of things can change over time. That the youth that he supports now are just going to be stagnant onward. That's kind of how I see it as a non sequitur, because it didn't really support or have anything really to do with furthering his argument. It actually goes against his argument in a way. Does that make sense? It was prologue, no reason to bring it back. It was his personal history. Yeah, but if he's making himself an example, right? I mean, when someone does that, in a presentation, and I'm thinking of the persuasive essay kind of structure, if that's how you open your argument, then there must be something relevant about telling us about your personal development that applies to your furthering of your argument. And so he brings this thing up, and then it never comes back to, he never reflects later on about how, oh, well, I think back to when I went to that debate class thinking it was going to be X, but it turned out to be Y, and boy, did I learn a lesson. He never did that. You see what I mean? He was setting the tone, telling us about himself. It was separate from the argument. No, not on a TEDx stage, not when you're making a persuasive presentation like this. Either the things you bring up are relevant to your overall point, or they're not. If he spends a significant, this wasn't some one-off comment that was a punchline or something. He spent a significant amount of time, the first few minutes of the talk, telling us about his personal development and idiosyncrasies and learning disabilities and everything, and then his debate experience. But then the lessons that he learned, that he went into something thinking he was going to show off and show everybody and impress them, and then he learned a lesson about how much he didn't know about things. He never came back to that. And it never played into his later arguments about how the youth of his generation should be the ones to lead us. So maybe this will be a controversy. I mean, this will be a TED excellence controversy. I think that it was a wasted amount of time that led us nowhere and didn't lend itself to his argument. Frosted Glass, privilege. He was talking about how privileged typical politicians with backers are. Oh, with corporate money, you mean? Oh, okay. Yeah, and then everybody who isn't is an underdog and that kind of, okay, all right. No, fair enough. I mean, that was a point he stuck on, is that, we don't take corporate money and so on and so forth. And I had a candidate win without corporate money, and it's got to be the little guy. It's got to be us working together and so on and so forth. And okay. And nearly the last minute with
bingo.
What? Bingo! Yeah!
Of course.
There you go. We have our first bingo, maybe our only bingo. No, Assassin the Gray, described like Molly Cook is the, quote, first open LGBTQ, etc., to be voted into office in Texas in a special election during May of this year. Curious why he could not say that. Did he exaggerate his part? Well, again, I don't know. I suppose it is. But I am absolutely befuddled as to why he wouldn't say this person's name. Don't get it. Don't get it at all. All right, everybody. I'm going to call it there. I know there's plenty of controversy here, and I appreciate Advocatus advocating for his position, as diabolical as he may be. The audience is the tiebreaker in my mind right now to leave the square as circled, and I appreciate everybody taking part in the poll. If there are arguments after the fact for squares to be circled or uncircled, I'm happy to take them. Leave them in the comments below, or conceivably, you could make your argument at length on the Discord server. Would you like to know about the Discord server? Let me tell you about the Discord server. There's a Discord server. Link is in the chat right now. All I have to do is click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me you're not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is, what's a good word for this one? Let's see. How about NRA? Just say hello, NRA, and that'll tell me that you watch the show. And then you can join the Discord server. And on there, you can discuss what's going on in the shows or any other random stuff you want to talk about. It's a very open and laid back environment. No big, long list of rules you have to sign off on or anything. Just be as pleasant as you would on chat as you would there, and you should be fine. A couple more hellos here before I go. Texas Attorney General Secret Agent. Good evening. Mansquatch. Good evening. Anybody else I missed in the meantime? Probably. Also, Yvonne Solomon. I said hello before we. Hello, Yvonne Solomon. Nice to see you. But elsewise, everybody, we're going to call it there. Again, any arguments for squares to be circled or uncircled, leave them in the chat below. The comments below after the video is posted. And if you move me to make a change or an addition to the card, I will update the card and post it to the Discord server and say so in the comments as well. Let's see. Any other programming notes? Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern will be the Sunday stream where I'll talk about a thing. I might already know at least one thing I'm going to talk about, because there was a little article, actually a couple of articles that came out this week that I found very entertaining. And so I already have them saved, and I may be talking about those. Elsewise, I'm still working on getting arranged the next Living on Borrowed Crime interview. I'll let you know about that as I go. And at some point, I have at least two extra episodes of that series that are already kind of pre-planned as soon as stuff happens. One is a discussion/debate between Matt Orchard and Mr. Black of The Disturbing Truth. Mr. Black is currently working on a documentary covering the West Memphis 3 case, a case that Matt Orchard had previously covered in a video documentary of his own. And they have conflicting ideas about theories on the case. And fingers crossed, knock for Micah, that once Mr. Black posts his documentary, I'll have both of them on to discuss the whys, wherefores, and elsewise of the very controversial case. Also, I'm not quite sure how I'll structure this yet, but soon oncoming to Netflix, from the same people who brought you the Dahmer docudrama, comes the Menendez Brothers docudrama. Another example of big budget, high profile true crime. And once it comes out, once the series is available, I may do a review or a discussion with some true crime content creators on what they thought about it, critiques and otherwise. Oh my gosh, Derek LaRue. Thank you again, Derek, for the very respectful, bowing Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie fucking wow.
No, there's a Satsu 2 cents Dogcat Fox. And again, all my stingers are playing very slowly on my end. I don't know how they're coming across over there, but I hope you guys saw them. Thank you so much, Derek. Very much appreciated again. And I'll always appreciate your support and generosity. And with that, everybody, going to call it here. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself and, of course, anybody who donated to the top, to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box. And in particular, please, 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 I know I'm playing favorites, but just one of those situations, please take a look at the one for Roan Harushan on there. His family could certainly use your help and support if you have it to give. And elsewise, please do share those out on social media. That is also appreciated. Oh my gosh, Keeverdam. Porky outro. Oh, okay. Well, everyone, I hope you all have a good rest of your Thursday evening. I hope you have a good Friday ahead of you. I hope you have a great weekend as well. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And elsewise, that's all, folks.